course maze does not restricted to 2 copies combined across your deck and sideboard, and the players who think that's a minor trim are about to get educated at the next reasonable. Before we get into the meat of this, I want to be upfront with you. This is not a hot take video. This is not me saying about madness or dunking on Mad Eye. What this is a genuine breakdown of what does happen structurally to this game and why the players who understand it first are about to have a significant edge over everyone else for the next several weeks. So if you care about community, if you care about your side deck, if you care about where this game is going, stay locked in. Let's talk about where competitive Gundam Card Game was sitting before this rock. The competitive scene has been growing fast. And I mean genuinely fast. We've gone from a novelty TCC where people were constantly optimistic about to a game with Rinso Circus, serious deck building discourse, and players who are writing mess of 3 with sideboards like they've been doing this for years. That growth is exciting, but it also means the meta has had time to calculate certain principles. And those principles were very clear. The thing rewarded aggression, it rewarded consistency, it punished hesitation. If you could apply early pressure, maintain more tempo, and force your opponent into a reactive decisions before they stabilize, you are winning. The dominant deck archetypes lean into this. Blue Purple, or commenting in the Dungeon world, Purple, statistically became a conversation piece at nearly every high level event because it could do exactly that. It had tools, it had redundancy, it had reads, and it was winning. The community understood this, players built around it, built against it, and the entire decision tree of competitive Gundam Card Game was calibrated about that reality. Knowing when the arrestor hits their power turn, knowing when you need to stabilize, knowing when to go for the throat. Then the format shift happened, and most people read the announcement, nodded, and then went back to what they were doing. That was a mistake. So let's actually talk about what changed. Corsica Maze has been moved to restricted 2. That means in official and sanctioned tournament and play, including events with sideboards and Mesa 3 formats, you can have a maximum of 2 copies of Corsica Maze across your entire deck and sideboard combined. Now 2 in the deck and 2 in the side, 2 total. Now the one exception is it came with the starter deck. There was one starter deck that came with 3. You're allowed to run that, but that is only until you modify that deck. Once you modify that deck, you have to go down to 2. On paper, that sounds like a minor trim. 1 card, 1 restriction, like those on. And I think that framing is exactly why most players are underestimating what this actually does. Here is the thing about Corsica Maze that makes it central to the aggressive game end. It gave you immediately access to a token unit capable of attacking on the same turn it entered play. You did not have to wait. You did not have to invest across 2 turns to generate pressure. You played the maze. You were immediately threatening. That immediacy is not a small thing. In a game where tempo is everything, Not having to spend an additional turn spinning up your offense is the difference between setting the pace and responding to it. When you run 3 copies of a card that does that, your access to it across the match is reliable. In a best of 3, especially where things can swing on a single momentum shift, that reliability creates a constant pressure timeline. Your opponent knows roughly when you come online, they know what they are solving for, and frankly, so do you. Running to 2 copies, not spending both deck and sideboard, and that reliability starts to fracture. And this is where the decision tree breaks in ways that are not immediately obvious. Your resource planning changes. When you were running 3, you're probably seeing Corsica base in your opening hand, or when your first few turns was high enough to build around. You could structure your early base with confidence, not your opening with net certainty about whatever that piece arrives on time, and uncertainty in your own game, and forces you to hedge your strategy or accept that some percentages of things your instance starts a turn so lower than you expected. That might not sound catastrophic, but here is the psychological dimension that I do not think the committee has a full record with. Each experienced player builds mental models of how a match should feel. There is an internal clock that tells you when you're ahead of schedule, on schedule, or behind. That clock was calibrated to a world where the aggressor has 3 Corsica bases, and the game's pressure timeline reflected that. Players on both sides of the table had iterated the rhythm. Attackers knew when it would lean in, defenders knew when the threat peaked and how long they need to survive to reach their stabilization window. That model is now unreliable. The pressure timeline has shifted. The peak arresting window does not look the same. And when your new mental model of how a massive field stops matching what is actually happening at the table, you start making decisions about based on reality that no longer exists. That is a problem. And it is a problem that will not fix itself though through thinking about it. It only gets fixed through reps, which brings us to the window that has us open. Every time a structural saying hits a card's name, there is a lag. The saying drops, the people react emotionally, content is made about what was lost or gained, and then everyone kind of waits and see what the next event looks like. And in that waiting period, a small group of errors do not wait. They test. They build new versions, they play games, they track what the board actually looks like under the new conditions, and they develop new mental models before the rest of the field could have even adapted that they have even accepted that the old ones are broken. We have seen this pattern repeatedly across other trading card games. Treasure Sayings has arrived. The board committee treats it as a mountainous pass and follows it away. A quiet group of air starts pacing and fencing the weeks following. Then suddenly the committee wakes up and starts talking about what those players figure out first. The window between structural sayings and committee adaptation is real, and it is usually measured in weeks, not months. So what cards ain't value right now? Anything that generates raw pressure without depending on Corsica base becomes more interesting. Bases and units that create pressure through different mechanisms, cards that do not require the specific token generation line that Corsica was enabling, became candidates for expiration. If your arrested cell has a cap where the third copy of Corsica used to live, you need now to ask what fills that role even partially, and what redundancy looks like in a world where your innocence is tightness constrained. On the other side, if you were milling specifically to solve for the Corsica base, your solution set may be over-calibrated to a threat that does software. Cards that existed primarily to answer the token name and might be doing less work now, as cyborg real estate could possibly be reclaimed for other threats. Alternatives like white-base did discuss, and they should be discussed, but they should be discussed honestly. White-base costs you 2 to deploy and other 2 to generate the token, and that token does not arrive until a sufficient turn. The immediately that made Corsica base so powerful typically does not insist in the same way. That matters in competitive A. Now let me speak directly about where you fit in this. If you are a competitive player preparing for upcoming events, the single most important thing you can do right now is to get the reps under the new constraints. Your intuitions were built in a different format. They will betray you if you trust them without testing. Old lines that felt clean will feel slightly off. Old timings will not match up. You need to pay actual names, not theory craft, not to make in your head, actual names where you can feel the difference. Testing is not optional here. It is the whole dog. If you are a more casual player who does not want resources, here is why this still matters to you. The competitive meta has rationally pulled on everything downstream. What is tested at the top, what is refined, what is adopted, filters down to local values faster than people expect. If you play casual or semi-competitive, the decisions being made right now by the players who do tests are going to define what your play route looks like in a month. And from a personal standpoint, for those of you who follow the purple pins and mills I have been running, this is actively shaping my April 12th side deck decisions. The question I am asking myself is now simply how do I solve for the blue purple as it existed last month? The question is how does blue purple look with two very reliable early pressure windows, and is my current site deck configuration solving for a version of deck that is slightly outdated? Those are uncomfortable questions, and they do not have comfortable answers yet. But I rather sit with the discomfort now than show up up to a table with the wrong read. The competitive scene is about to have this conversation in a serious way. The events coming up will be the proving ground where we start to see who adapted and who was still playing the old format in their head. So I want you to know what your think breaks wide open. What card suddenly looks different to you under the sayings? What lines are you cutting? What are you testing? Drop in the comments. Let's actually build this analysis together because this community is sharp and I want to hear what you are seeing at your tables. The conversations is on here. Let's make it worth happening.